Good morning. Today we are writing linear equations in slope-intercept form. This means that we're using a slope and the y-intercept of a graph, meaning where it's crossing the y-axis, whatever point that is, to write an equation. So first, we've seen this equation y equals mx plus b. We know m is our slope as a fraction, rise over run, and then b is where our graph would begin at our y-intercept. So if our m is our slope, m is, in this case, 8, and our y-intercept, or b, is -7, all they're asking us to do is write an equation in the form y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. So we know m is 8. We're going to plug that in for our m, or our slope, not for x, for m. And then we're going to plug in b, which is -7, for b. So our equation will read y equals 8x plus b, or in this case not plus because b is a negative, it would be -7. This is the equation they are looking for. Oops, didn't mean to cut off the 7 there. Same thing over here. M is our slope is 3/4. Our y-intercept is b, which is 3. So our equation would be y equals mx plus b, or y equals m, which is 3/4 x, plus b, and b is 3. There's our equation. Now instead of just giving us m and b, we can find it from a graph as well, but we're still going to write an equation. M is our slope, so we can count our slope from one point to the next. Remember, our slope is rise over run. So we're rising 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're running 1, 2, 3. Rise over run, it's 4/3. And then our b is our y-intercept, where our graph is crossing the y-axis. So in this case, it's crossing the y-axis right here. This blue line is crossing this yellow line that I just highlighted, which is the y-axis. From the origin, we count -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So b is a -5. Now that we have m and b, we can write an equation in this form. Y equals mx plus b, or 4/3 x minus b, or -5. There's our equation. Let's do the same thing over here. First, find our slope. If we start from this point here on the left, we're going down -1, -2, because we're doing our rise first, up and down. We went -2, and running 1, 2, 3, 4. -2 over 4, we can actually simplify that by dividing by 2 to give us -1 over 2, or -1/2. So that's what I'm going to write here instead. -1 over 2. Now if you went the other direction, went rise 2, and run, going -1, 2, 3, 4, you will get the same answer. It doesn't matter if the negative's on the top or the bottom. And then our y-intercept, where is this crossing the y-axis? This is our y-axis. This blue line that we have is crossing the y-axis right there, and this point from the origin is up 1. So b is 1. So our equation is y equals mx plus b, or -1/2 x plus 1. Let's flip over to the next slide. Now we are going to write an equation of the line that passes through the given points. So you guys, our goal isn't any different. We're still trying to get an equation in the form y equals mx plus b. So first, we're going to find our slope, m, and then we're going to find our y-intercept, b. So this is m, and then b. And then write an equation in slope-intercept form, which is that form right there. So first it says, what are the 2 points? They're right there. So I'm not going to rewrite them. These 2 points are x, y, that's my first point. X, y, that's my second point. And now I can use that to find my slope. This is our slope formula that we have learned already. All we're going to do is plug in the numbers to solve it. So first, y2 is 1 minus y1, which is 5. Then on the bottom, x2, which is 1.5, minus x1, which is 0. Well, 1 minus 5, there's more negatives. There's negative 4. 1.5 minus nothing is still 1.5. Let me erase this b for a second. So this is a nice slope. However, I don't really like slopes that have decimals in it. So to get rid of this 0.5 or 1/2, instead of dividing, I can actually multiply by a number. This one, in this case, 2, because 1/2 2 times would give me a nice whole number. So negative 4 times 2 would be negative 8, and 1.5 times 2 would give me 3. 1.5 2 times would give me 3. So there's my slope. That's a lot nicer numbers than a decimal. And then we need to find our y-intercept. It says when x is 0. So you guys, we know that if we were to graph, our y-intercept would be where we're crossing the y-axis. It might be a positive, it might be a negative. It's somewhere on this y-axis. So what we need to do is to figure out where that is. So in order to plot any point on the y-axis, in terms of x and y, well, x would have to be 0 because we didn't go to the right and we didn't go to the left. So our point would have to be 0, some number. Whatever number that is, that's going to be where we're at, either up, positive, or down, negative, on our y-axis. So it says when x is 0. That makes sense because x has to be 0 to be on this y-axis. So instead of just 0, some number, we're looking for 0, b, because b would tell us what our y-intercept is. So look for a point that has a 0 for x. Well, this second point, x is a 1.5, so it can't be that one. But our first point, x is 0. Right here, this point, we have the point 0, 5. So b must be 5. That would be the point 0 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. So all we needed to do was figure out what b is and what m is. Right here, this is m. To write our equation in the form y equals mx plus b. Now we found both. So our equation is y equals negative 8/3 x, oops, don't forget the letter, plus b, so plus 5. Let's try a couple more like that. First, what are the 2 points? Let's label them. X, y, that's my first point. X, y, that's my second point. And now we need to find our slope. Because we are trying, our goal again down here is to get the form y equals mx plus b. So right now, we're finding m, which is our slope. So y2 right here is negative 2 minus y1, which is 0. Oops, not 1, 0. Then on the bottom, x2 is 0 minus, from the equation right here, x1, which is also a negative 1. Those two negatives make a positive. So negative 2 minus nothing is still negative 2. 0 plus 1 is 1. So negative 2 divided by 1 is just negative 2. So there's our slope. Now we need to find our y-intercept, or b. Reminder, this is when x is 0, because on our x-axis, we're finding where it's crossing the y-axis. We're not going left and right. It's 0, some number. Could be positive, could be negative. So 0, b is what we're looking for. Well, this first point doesn't have x for 0, so we're not looking at that point. This one does, though. There's a 0 there first. That point is 0, negative 2. So b must be negative 2. So our equation is y equals mx plus b, or negative 2x. Not plus, in this case it's minus 2. Negative 2x minus 2. Flip over to the next slide. This one looks the same, except we have some funky symbols here. Reminder that f of x is a fancy way of saying y. So this is really exactly what I just said. F of x equals y. So as a point, x is 4 and y is 17. And same thing here. This is really x and this is really y. So our point would be 0, 5. They're written in the same order. Don't let it try and confuse you. They're saying here's a function. We plugged in 4. We got out 17. So those are our 2 points. I could have written those points over here. This is our first point. This is our second point. Let's find our slope first. So y2 minus y1, that would be 5 minus 17. And then on the bottom, x2 minus x1, or 0 minus 4. So if we simplify that, 5 minus 17, there's more negatives, that 17 is negative. 17 minus 5 is 12, so it's a negative 12. 0 minus 4 is just negative 4. Well, 12 divided by 4 is 3, and we know 2 negatives make a positive. So our slope is 3. And then looking for our y-intercept, or b, looking for the point 0, comma b. This one does not have a 0 first, this one does, so it's 0, comma 5. So b is 5. So finally our equation is y equals mx plus b, or 3x plus 5. That's our equation that we're looking for. I would like for you to try this one on your own, and then check the video to see if you got it right. So first, what are the 2 points? Our 2 points in the form x and y. This is f of x equals y, so 0, negative 2. And this one is 8, comma 4. So I'm going to label my points x, y. This is my first point, x, y, second point. And let's plug them into our slope formula. So we have y2, which is 4, minus y1, which is a negative 2. Those 2 negatives make a positive. And then on the bottom, x2 minus x1, or 8 minus 0. Well, 4 plus 2 is 6. 8 minus nothing is still 8. But we can actually simplify 6 over 8. If we divide by 2, we get 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and 8 divided by 2, which is 4, 3/4. And then last, looking for our y-intercept, looking for b, we're looking for the point 0, comma b. This first point here has a 0, so our b is really negative 2. B is our y-intercept, where we're crossing the y-axis. So this one would be at down 2 if we were to graph it. So in slope-intercept form, or the form y equals mx plus b, m is 3/4, and then plus b, in this case it's negative, so minus b, minus 2. Y equals 3/4 x minus 2. Alright, we have one last problem. This one says, you're at a recording studio that charges musicians an initial fee of $50 to record an album. Studio time costs an additional $35 per hour. So we are going to have to write an equation that gives the total cost of an album as a function of studio time. You guys, this equation that we're looking at is called function form. I thought it said it back here. Y equals mx plus b is also known as function form. So really, they're just telling you to write an equation in the form y equals mx plus b. We need to figure out what's m and what is b. And then once we're done, once we have an equation, find the total cost of a recording album that takes 10 hours of studio time. So in order to determine which one's which, I like to think B is where we begin on our graph, or our beginning amount of money or time or whatever they're talking about. So what was our beginning amount? This is something that you'd have to pay one time. It's just one spot that we're starting. Our m is how we're moving on our slope, or what we're doing multiple times. Oopsies. Multiple times. Like if we were graphing, we would do our m, or our slope, we'd move rise over run, plot a point, rise over run, plot a point, rise over run, plot a point. So m is what we're doing multiple times, or what you have to pay multiple times. So think, what doesn't change and what does change? What are you trying to find? So what do we have to pay multiple times? Well, this fee right here is just one-time fee. We have to pay $35 every single hour, so we have to pay that multiple times. So the 35 is really our m, and 50 is our beginning cost that we have to pay one time. So our equation would be y equals m, which is 35x, plus b, and b, our beginning cost is 50. So there's our equation. And then it says, part B, find the total cost of recording an album that takes 10 hours of studio time. Well, if you think about it here, we have to pay $35 per hour. So x must be the number of hours. So if it's going to take us 10 hours, we're plugging that in for x. So 35 times x, which is 10, plus 50. So we don't need a calculator for this. 35 times 10, you're just multiplying by 10, so putting a 0 on the end, 350. And then plus 50, 350 plus 50 would give you a total of 400. So it costs you $400 to rent the studio for 10 hours. Alright, here's your homework. On your syllabus, I think it says right here 18, but 18 is not an odd number, so really start at 19. Good luck!